The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Talk 1240.
I've got a lot bottled up. There's been a lot happening in the field of privacy, in the field of surveillance that hasn't really been addressed properly by basically anybody, especially in media. People in media, especially people on TV, people we generally watch to get information, tend to not really know how phones work. They tend to not really know how computers work in general. They tend to just be not really tech illiterate because you see them on their Blackberries and stuff. It's not like they don't know how to use phones. It's just that they don't know about the intricacies. They don't know about the nuances of how these technological wonders, what they are. They don't know how they work. And it's a shame. And I believe that it is partially intentional, that there's a lot of misinformation going out there about what exactly the heck is going on with the San Bernardino shooter's phone. There's a lot going on there that hasn't really been properly addressed, and we need to get down to the nitty-gritty, really, of what exactly is happening here. Because this is one of the biggest stories of the year, if not the biggest story of the year. In San Bernardino, you might remember, we covered it live when it was happening. In San Bernardino in California, there was, of course, a shooting. It's not really been covered very much since, but there was a terrorist attack in San Bernardino where several people were killed, several others injured. There was a long police chase after that. The suspects were seemingly lost. You might remember that. The suspects just sort of disappeared and then reappeared a few hours later in an SUV. We saw the footage of the body being pulled out of the car. We saw the shots fired. We saw that weird armored, that sort of armored forklift thing, the single-person platform they were using to armor themselves against the police were using to armor themselves against potential gunfire coming out of that black SUV, which the shooters appear to have been in. You remember that? It's a very scary thing. It was a very scary happenstance. It was very frightening to watch on TV. When you watch it on TV and you watch it on the internet streams like we were here, it felt like you were part of the action. And I'm sure that they filmed it that way intentionally. You know, when you watch these things, you feel like you're very much a part of the action. And it was a very personal thing, especially fresh off the cusp of the shooting that happened here in Chattanooga. We had just had a shooting in July of last year that really affected us personally in our own hometown here. And then a few months later, you have what happened in San Bernardino, and it seems like just one thing after another, and you start to wonder when the next thing is going to happen. And the FBI is really exploiting that feeling. And let's be honest with ourselves here. Let's be clear, to use the president's terms. Let me be clear. This is not about terrorism. The whole issue of the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone, the whole thing with the FBI backdoor, none of it is about terrorism. Not one bit. The FBI does not care about terrorism in this particular case. There's no reason to. I mean, terrorism is solved by many agencies working in conjunction with each other in order to stop terrorist attacks from happening. I'm sure that some terrorist attacks have been thwarted. It's just we don't know about it, right? I mean, everyone talks about that. And NSA metadata collection is vital to preventing terrorist attacks from happening. I mean, look at the Boston bombing and how that was thwarted. Oh, wait. And look at, the shootings in Chattanooga and how that was thwarted, except, oh, wait. Maybe it actually doesn't do any good. But the whole deal with the FBI wanting to get into the back door of the iPhone systems has nothing at all to do with terrorism. It has something to do with something that's possibly a lot scarier than Islamic extremist terrorism. And that's a threat that is perhaps not nearly as deadly. I would posit not nearly as deadly, but it is perhaps on par a threat to liberty. And that is simply government overreach. That it's plain and simple. That's what the goal here is. There is a God that these people worship. There's a God that the people in the intelligence agencies worship, and that God is information. And you have a high priest like James Comey, who worships the God of information, who's pushing his doctrine upon us, saying that we need to put it in those terms, saying that we need to put a back door into the iPhone systems. Apple needs to put a backdoor into every iPhone so the FBI can get access to this information. And he's using the San Bernardino shooting as a crutch for that argument. Every single time we hear about the backdoor in the iPhones, it immediately becomes an argument about the San Bernardino shooter's phone. That's not what's at issue. In fact, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, has said, I will gladly help you in the San Bernardino shooter's phone if I could. But the iPhones are set up in such a way, and I'm ending my quote there, the iPhones are set up in such a way so that it's decentralized. You cannot get into the iPhones that way. It doesn't work. Each and every iPhone after iOS 7, I believe, is when it started. Each and every iPhone after a particular version is encrypted. And I want to sort of explain that. So when your phone locks itself, and I hope you have a PIN code on your phone. If you don't, you should. When you lock your phone and it goes to the lock screen and you have a PIN code that comes up, the data on your phone is effectively, it's scrambled, basically. And you need a code in order to access that. So that can be your PIN code or it can be your thumbprint. And you really shouldn't use your thumbprint. Don't ever use your thumbprint because it's highly insecure. A fingerprint can be taken as physical evidence, whereas a PIN code is intellectual evidence, which can't be taken. There's a lot of different arguments about that. Use a PIN code, have it be random. Don't tell anyone what it is. And don't have it be the same thing as your bank PIN code, because that's a bad idea too. Lots of reasons why that is. But when the iPhone is locked, it's essentially locked out to everyone except the person who has intimate knowledge of that phone, the intimate knowledge being the PIN code. It's simple. It's easy. It's like there is only one key to this lock, and you have that key. And if you happen to die, that key dies with you, and that key cannot be replicated by anyone else. That's basically what's happening here. And much unlike physical locks where you can easily break into them, I've done it before, not maliciously, but just for fun. It's easy to pick locks. It's not so easy to break into iPhones because you have a team of multi-million-dollar team, billions and millions of dollars being poured into this internet security to make these phones more secure, because you have hackers out there. That's the chief concern of Apple, is hackers, right? You have ransomware, you have people who steal phones and then try to sell that information. You've had the whole iCloud leak, if you remember that, with the fappening, right? Remember that when all the nude images of different celebrities leaked. You have all these things, all these people pushing for Apple to have better security, and then suddenly the FBI comes along and says, hey, actually, we want you to worsen your security and make it so that anyone could get into your iPhone, because that really is what they're asking for when they're asking for backdoor into the iPhone. You've probably seen a political cartoon where it's the FBI sawing into a wall, and printed on the wall is iPhone backdoor. The FBI is sawing into this wall, and directly behind the FBI agent is a hacker, and directly behind the hacker is Vladimir Putin, and directly behind Vladimir Putin is Jinping. I can't remember his first name. I think it's Yao Jinping or Dao Jinping. I don't recall. The Prime Minister of China, anyway. The People's Republic of China, not the Republic of China, Taiwan, and is cutting through this wall. And you know that's going to happen because think about this. As soon as the FBI grants clemency as soon as the Apple grants clemency to the FBI, there's no precedent now for Apple to reject claims from other governments too. Now let's think about that. Hold on. Now, yes, Apple is an American company. Apple was founded by two Americans, one of whom was the son of a Syrian immigrant, nonetheless. But Apple was founded by two Americans who are very American. They founded on very American ideas of entrepreneurship, and it's great. Apple's a cool company. I'm not a huge fan of its products, but I will admit Apple's a pretty cool company. It came out with good products, and it still does to a large degree. Good products come out of Apple. I don't like them personally, but I can't deny that on the engineering side, they're very good products. So Apple comes out with good products, very American stuff. But you have to admit that Apple is international in the sense that Apple does sell its products internationally. It's not like you can't buy iPhones in the UK. You go to Ireland and suddenly you can't buy an iPhone. You don't have to smuggle them in. You can buy an iPhone in China. You can buy an iPhone in Russia. You can probably buy iPhones in Iran. I don't know. Maybe you can. You can probably buy iPhones in Afghanistan or Iraq. You can buy iPhones all over the place. It's a hot commodity. It's everywhere. And Apple has every reason to sell them everywhere. Why in the world would Apple limit its flow to just one country, being the U.S.? I mean, there's no reason for that. So obviously Apple does what a business does and sells these products around the world. But because this product, the iPhone, now exists around the world and under the jurisdiction, supposedly, of foreign governments, there's no claim now. As soon as the FBI gets that backdoor, why not Russia? Why not Iran? Why not the UK? Even. I don't want the UK in there either. Why not India? Why not Afghanistan, Iraq? Name any country in which an iPhone exists or even doesn't exist. They'll argue for national security purposes we need to be able to get into an iPhone if one happens to exist within our borders. Like a country like perhaps an island nation actually doesn't have any iPhones. They're all Android fans there, but some tourist comes over with an iPhone and commits a crime, now we need to get into that iPhone. You see, it's the mentality. It sets a precedent, and it's a dangerous one. And I don't even want the FBI to get into this phone because, again, there's a very good reason. The FBI has no business getting into the phones of random people because that's what it would lead to. It's obvious. James Comey, the director of the FBI currently, has been begging for a backdoor for a really long time. I talked about this on my previous show, Digital Drive, years ago, probably 2 to 3 years ago. And that's not me tooting my own horn. That's just me saying how obvious it was. James Comey's begging for this backdoor 2 to 3 years ago. And now we're acting like it's a terrorist issue. Now we're acting like suddenly it's connected to San Bernardino. Come on. Give me a break. That's not what it's about. Yeah, that plays a minor factor now. And if it was just a warrant for the one San Bernardino shooter, that's a hard name to say, San Bernardino shooter's phone, I could understand it. But it's not. This is about extending surveillance. That's what it's all about. It's about extending surveillance, extending the information which government agencies and government contractors, as a result, Edward Snowden didn't directly work for the NSA. He was a contractor. He wasn't like an NSA direct employee. He was an independent contractor. So it's not just people who are on the NSA's direct payroll who have DOD badges and get their pay stub from the DOD. It's not that. It's also contractors. So anyone who works for government potentially could have access to this information. Do we really want that? Because what if Edward Snowden was a Russian double agent or an Iranian double agent or an Israeli spy or who knows what else and sold that information to some other country? It could happen. It probably has happened. That's the other thing. This probably has happened. What kind of PR nightmare would that be for the NSA, though, if that came out? I can nearly guarantee you there's been some sort of massive leak of information or even small leak of information that came from the metadata of regular consumer, customer American phones that went out to some foreign country. Now, doesn't that make you a little bit uneasy? That little idea, doesn't that make you just a little bit uneasy? Let's not lie to ourselves here. This is not about the whole, terrorist. That's not what it's about. This is about control. This is about getting information, brokering information, and essentially having control over the flow of information or the end result of that flow of information, which is what the metadata collection was. Where I know they kept saying, we don't actually collect cell phone records. We collect cell phone metadata records, and that turned out to be a lie. And it just kept going from there. Well, yeah, we lied about that, but that's okay because we're the feds. We can do what we want. And do we really want these people having our information? I kind of don't think so. And the thing is, it's not like, we can elect a president to fix it, because both ends of the spectrum, whether you vote for Trump, because he's going to be the nominee, whether you vote for Trump or whether you vote for Clinton or you vote for Sanders, they all want the FBI in on these phones. That's what it comes right down to. And that's the most frightening thing to me. Hey, caller, you're on the air. What's going on?
Great topic. Snowden was talking last night about, because this was a report on late last night, how he, as a private contractor, as long as he had an email, can get into anyone's phone conversation.
Yeah.
And mail. Now, can you imagine, prior to email, the internet, and the electronic industry, that the government would be allowed just to randomly open your mail? They weren't just allowed to randomly open anyone's mail. There needed to be a search warrant. So the idea that government can invade your privacy is repugnant. It shows their arrogance. There was an individual talking about how he was in control. I think it was called Quest Phone, and how years ago, prior to 9/11, that he was given hundreds of millions of dollars, this company, to tap international calls. When they wanted him to tap domestic calls without a warrant, he said no. They broke this guy. He ended up in federal prison. They came after him, and you know what he said?
What's that?
He said Apple's next. He says the feds are going to hound them forever now. Look what they did to Bill Gates. I don't know if you remember this in the 90s.
With the antitrust lawsuit? Yeah.
They threatened to break up Microsoft. Bill Clinton did, unless they gave him a back door. And Gates gave him the back door. And I guarantee you watch what happens with Apple. Unless they're able to sniff everyone's underwear, these federal pigs, unless they're able to sniff everyone's underwear under the guise of national security, they're going to threaten to break up Apple. You watch.
And it's funny about Bill Gates, actually. He just came out with a statement. I believe he was talking to David Muir from ABC, saying that he would gladly give the FBI a backdoor if he was in charge of Apple. And that just shows you something. I'm glad Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple. I never thought I'd say it, but I'm glad Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple. It's a scary thing.
Well, Russell, like I said, there's hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. We don't even know that Apple's maybe looking to get paid off. They're looking for a big payday. We don't know that. We already know that the big telecommunication companies allowed the federal government to put in devices to listen to your phone calls and your emails and your internet. Just holding your phone, you can have invasion issues,
right?
Whereby the government can tap into the camera in the front. I claim that your cell phone is nothing more than a tracking device. They don't need to chip you anymore. That went out the window. The idea of chipping people. Everyone has a phone, and it's within 3 feet of themselves, even when they're sleeping. So that's your new chip. That's better than a chip, actually.
Yeah, I mean, even with you carry a phone to the bathroom, now the feds can track your bathroom habits too. It goes far deeper than any of us really want to admit as consumers, right? Because we want to think that we're safe, but no one really is. It just can't be.
Well, they can't prove that tapping phones and invading people's privacy has stopped one terrorist attack. That comes with good communications. And people say, well, why is the government doing this? They're doing this primarily for economic reasons, so they can control the economy. That's number one. Number two, that you don't step out of line. Look what they're doing to Trump. That if you step out of line and attack the Federal Reserve or the system, they're going to find something on you to discredit you to make sure you never have enough power to bring them down. That's the second reason. And the third reason is absolute total 100 control of trillions of dollars in the economy. And anyone that doesn't believe that is asleep and hiding under a rock. But great show. Thanks.
Thank you. Great call. You can call in, by the way, 423-800-8949, 423-800-8949 is the number to call in. And control, the caller's right, control is the number one factor, economic and personal. Because think about the money system and how it is today. We're not really spending money, right? I mean, there are people who are a lot smarter than me on the money issue about gold and silver, and I'm sure I'll have them on at some point. I really want to, because it's a very interesting topic. But there are people who are a lot smarter than me about the money issue, and I'll probably get terms wrong, but we're not spending real money. We're spending pretend monopoly money, full faith and credit of the Federal Reserve, whatever that means, right? Full faith and credit of the federal government, whatever that means. Federal Reserve note. Okay, what does that mean? What is that? It's not real. It's just because people believe that it is. Perception is reality. I believe this dollar can buy me a pack of gum, and because everyone else believes this, and the lenders and the merchants believe this too. Merchants meaning the people who you're buying from believe this too. Then it is. I can now buy a pack of gum for $1. Why is it now $1? Whereas when my parents were a kid, it was a penny for candy, penny candy. Whatever happened to penny candy, right? It's not around anymore because of inflation. Inflation is one of the biggest forms of theft ever. And it's amazingly orchestrated. Taxation and inflation, wrongful taxation, I should say, and inflation are two of the biggest forms of theft ever pulled off in the history of humanity that I know of. It's a sham, it's a scam, and that's what the current money system is. Not just the American one. I'm not just bashing the U.S. because I do love America. Let's not get anything wrong here. I love America. I love where I live. I love the original American system. I think the Articles of Confederation are great. And I think that the American Constitution is a wonderful document, very well written. Declaration of Independence, these are all written by people who are way smarter than I am. Very smart documents, very well written. Love it. But the U.S. government, the current system is what I hate. I guess that's what it comes down to. The current system is what I hate, and the people who prop it up and the people who ignorantly defend it. I don't really hate the people who ignorantly defend it. I don't really hate a whole lot of people individually. It's more systems, because I think hate is equivalent biblically to murder. And I don't want to murder anyone, right? I'm not down with murder. I'm down with constructive criticism. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm tearing down this facade that somehow the money system we have is worth something, because it's really not. Let's not pretend anymore that the money system we have is actually worth something. To give you an idea, though, about what the caller was talking about with control of the money system and control of faith, think about Amazon for a second here. Amazon has been losing money for a long, long time. And I don't want to bash Amazon too much, because I do like Amazon and I like what it does. I'm not saying Amazon's a terrible company or Jeff Bezos is an idiot or anything like that. But think about Amazon for a second. It loses money constantly. Amazon loses money on so many different things. I could tell you horror stories. I've known people who work there, Amazon loses tons and tons of money. And I want to out the people who I know, so I don't want to talk too much about that particular aspect of it. But Amazon loses so much money that's not even funny. Amazon's only worth comes from its stocks. If faith was lost in the American stock market, Amazon would disappear overnight. Amazon would not exist anymore, or it would get purchased by some other company. It would become a subsidiary of Google or Microsoft or Alibaba or some other company. Overstock, maybe eBay. That'd be funny. Amazon now owned by PayPal. How fun would that be, right? But no, I mean, it's not worth anything. And that's the exact same problem that we have with the American money system. If suddenly everyone said, wait a minute, this is monopoly money, it's not worth anything, I'm not going to bother using it anymore, I'm going to barter instead, the whole system would collapse around us. And I think that wouldn't be such a bad thing. You know, we can rebuild a better system from that, or the original system maybe from that. But, you know, that's just me. We're going to talk a little bit more about a Florida sheriff here in a few seconds.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over to the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd, right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Shake, shake, shake it at Five Guys Burgers and Fries. The most delicious and unique milkshakes. How about this for delicious and different? Add freshly cooked bacon to any milkshake.
Is that even legal?
You bet your milkshake and booty it is. Chocolate caramel bacon shake. Coffee caramel shake. All hand blended. Shake, shake, shake it. Down at Five Guys Burgers and Fries. Just about any flavor shake that you can imagine. And they are delicious. Get your shake, shake, shake on at Five Guys Burgers and Fries. Five Guys Burgers and Fries, located in Hickson at North Point. Gun Barrel at the Walmart Center. Downtown 4th and Broad. And in Cleveland at Keith and Stewart.
MLS 2239. What would you do with all that cash? Listen up, y'all. Ben Phillips here, Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. $1,200. That's how much we just put back in a Saudi Daisy family's pocket per month. All they did was pick up the phone. 805-9100. That's 805-9100. Get that quick quote now. 805-9100. HomeRateMortgage.com. MLS 2239. Do you want to achieve the American dream in 2016? Listen up, y'all. I'm Ben Phillips with Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. We just helped a police officer purchase his first home in East Brainerd. Now he's grilling and chilling on his back deck. The American dream. You could achieve it with no money down options. Why wouldn't you call? 805-9100, HomeRateMortgage.com.
Hi, I'm Sabrina with Sabrina Realty Associates. Now is a great time to sell your home. In our area, inventory is at an all-time low, which translates into higher sales prices. Call us today at 423-499-7780 to set up a free consultation and discuss our unique and aggressive marketing programs. We will provide you with a free market analysis to determine the right value of your home. Call us today at 423-499-7780 or visit our website at SabrinaRealty.com.
Our house in the middle of our street. Our house. Money, lots and lots of money. I want to buy in the sky.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business? Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Call me now, 875-5621.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A man was shot in the head on Cowherd Street early Sunday morning. Police say that Reuben L. Simpson was injured, but his injuries are not life-threatening. The CPD responded at 3:20 a.m. after getting reports of the gunshot and located the victim. He was unresponsive when they arrived. The EMS responded as well and took him to a local hospital. Officers secured the area and talked to different witnesses, some of whom worked for the Bella Vita restaurant, and they attempted to identify one suspect. The police questioned him and determined that the suspect the Bella Vita people had identified was not actually involved. There's no further word on the victim's condition. Well, the TN Ready tests begin on Monday, but hundreds of Hamilton County students are planning to opt out of the test. 212, or 41% of Normal Park students, have opted out of the test following the crashing of the digital system, which was originally planned for the taking of the test. An emergency paper system was put in place just in time for test taking. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Looking good out there through the afternoon with some sunshine, warming up nicely, highs 73 to 75. Tonight, milder under fair skies, lows lower 50s. More warm spring-like weather ahead for the midweek, becoming breezy but dry through Thursday with highs back into the mid-70s. Did you know that your car talks to you? Are you listening? All those beeps, vibrations, and light-up icons are your car's way of communicating to help you be a safer driver. Learn more now at mycardoeswhat.org. And I'm Swarm Gene 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ford. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
When the weather turns bad, turn to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. On the net, hotnewstalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. From the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Chattanooga, we've got you covered. When the weather turns bad, the Tennessee Valley turns to Hot News Talk Radio.
Go, 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 go. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm reading this. I was reading this Ars Technica article a little while ago. Ars has kind of gone off the deep end in a lot of ways. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. But I was reading this Ars Technica article about this Florida sheriff. It's too good. It's too funny. You can't make this stuff up, because in the real world, sometimes things are just more ridiculous than fiction ever could be. Like, you watch a show or a movie like Fargo, both the TV series and the movie. You watch Fargo and you think that's just too far-fetched to ever really happen. You know, that's a fake sort of thing, that it's ridiculous. It can never really happen. It's just sort of this weird, ridiculous thing. And really, real life is kind of scarier than movies a lot of the time. I mean, after all, the worst horror movies are always based on real life in the end. Even The Thing is based on real life to some degree. The Thing is that movie with not Russell Crowe. He's another good actor. Kurt Russell, the other guy who has my first name. Kurt Russell, he's in that Arctic military base and the alien dog comes down and it transforms into different. Great movie. But even, scary sci-fi movies like that are based on some form of reality. And sometimes reality is even scarier than that fiction. And this is another case where sometimes reality is a little bit funnier than the funniest comedy. I've laughed harder at real life situations than I have at comedies ever. Most comedies I don't think are very funny. Clerks is my favorite comedy movie of all time. We'll talk about that some other time. My point is, right? My point is that sometimes reality is even weirder than fiction. Well, this is one of those cases. This Ars Technica article really, really covers it. A Florida sheriff has threatened to arrest Apple CEO Tim Cook, where a situation similar to Apple's resistance to government pressure in the ongoing San Bernardino terrorism investigation ever to arise in his jurisdiction. So let's be clear here. Let's clarify. He's saying that if something like San Bernardino were to happen in his county. I don't recall which county he's in. I think it's Orange, of course. Anyway, he's a Florida sheriff somewhere in Florida. They're all crazy down there. You know, they're not even Southern. They don't count. But down in that awful wasteland of Florida, wherever this sheriff is, he says that if something like San Bernardino ever happened, he would arrest Tim Cook if Tim Cook didn't ever give that information over. Well, Tim Cook has said many times, hey, I can't actually. I would help you out on the individual case level if I could, but the system, the infrastructure does not work that way, so I can't do that. So the sheriff would essentially be arresting someone for having done nothing. How can you be arrested for doing nothing? You know, it's not that you are denying something. It's just you are doing nothing. Your action is an inaction. How can you be arrested for an inaction? Where's the damage? For there to be a crime, you have to prove damage, and they can't possibly do that. Anyway, last month, the government obtained an unprecedented court order under the All Writs Act. How, which would compel Apple to help. If the order stands up to legal challenges, Apple would be forced to create a new customized iOS firmware that would remove the passcode lockout on the seized iPhone 5C. Apple has said both publicly and in court filings that it will fight the order as much as possible, and the company has drawn support from many cryptographers, tech companies, and even the husband of a survivor of the attack. So it's not like these people who are against the FBI getting into the iPhone are all, anti-victim. Right? Like I'm against the FBI getting into the iPhones, but I also sympathize greatly with the victim, because if you're a victim of a crime, and I've never been put in this situation, right? This has never happened to me. I don't know anyone who's been shot personally. I know people who've been shot, but I don't know anyone who's actually been shot personally or been any sort of tragedy. So it's not like I have firsthand experience with this, but I can sort of empathize a little bit, where if you're in a tragic situation, you want closure. You want a final answer. You want to see the big picture. You want to understand every minuscule fact about what happened. Look at all the theories about 9/11, right? We don't really feel like we've had closure. And it's been almost 15 years now since 9/11 happened, and we still don't feel like we have closure yet. It just doesn't feel like we've had it yet. We haven't had final justice. So we come up with theories, and some of them are based on reality. Some of them are a little bit wacky. Some of them are very intriguing. Take from it what you will. I'm not here to talk about 9/11, but that's just using that as an example. And there's not really closure for the families of victims, or the victims who are obviously victims of a horrible incident, which happened in San Bernardino. It was a blatant terrorist attack. Some news media didn't want to call it that. That's what it is. That's what it was. It was a terrorist attack. It was an attack against the civilian population by an individual who appears to have been backed by a militant organization. So obviously terrorism. Well, the sheriff, Judd, was asked about Apple's refusal to help create custom firmware, which would allow the FBI to use brute force to get in the iPhone 5C from San Bernardino. The sheriff did not mince any words. So here's a quote from him. I don't want to put words in this good sheriff's mouth. He says this: "You cannot create a business model to go. We're not paying attention to the federal judge or the state judge. You see, we're above the law," Judd said. "The CEO of Apple needs to know he's not above the law, and neither is anybody else in the United States." Well, neither are you, Sheriff, but we'll get into that a little bit later. He says, "Believe you me, if I get a toehold in this county and I can get the state attorney's office to prosecute and a judge to back us up with this, I'll lock the rascal up," Judd concluded. Which his wording immediately tells me that he's from a bygone era where he doesn't really understand how this works. He doesn't really get how the iPhone 5C works. He probably has never used one. He probably doesn't get how the iPhone infrastructure works. He doesn't get it when Tim Cook says, "I actually seriously cannot get into the iPhone without compromising every single other person's iPhone. It doesn't work that way. I can't do it." Tim Cook is being surprisingly libertarian here. Whether or not he believes in the philosophy or he's just doing it to save his company's hide doesn't really matter right now, because he's still doing the right thing, whatever his motive happens to be. And the people in, say, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg has had a very similar position. And again, whether or not he believes it philosophically, you got to save face. If you're in a company like Facebook or you're in a company like Apple, companies which deal nearly exclusively, much more so in Apple's case, deal nearly exclusively with data, with personal information. Facebook is one giant stash of personal info. So if these companies ever said, yeah, we actually really like the government and we constantly give information over to the government, even when they don't have a warrant for it, we'll give it over. Why not? Because we believe in the American system, right? We believe in the American civil justice system. We believe in the criminal justice system. We believe in the courts. You know, as soon as Facebook says that, people are going to jump off of Facebook. Facebook needs warm bodies. Facebook needs people to click on the ads. That's what keeps Facebook going. That's what keeps Apple going. Apple needs people to keep buying the phones. Apple needs people to keep using iCloud, to keep using all the different Apple systems. And if people stop doing it, Apple loses money. So whether there's a philosophical motivation or a money motivation or a combination of the two, or maybe even none of the above, I don't really care right now, to be frank, because Tim Cook is doing the right thing. Mark Zuckerberg, whether he believes in it or not, I know he's very liberal, but nonetheless, whether he believes in it or not, is doing the right thing. And I'm fine with that. Now, so far as the sheriff goes, to me, he's a fascist with a badge, man. That's what he is. He's a fascist with a badge. Somebody elected him in. He doesn't understand justice. He doesn't understand law. He's a fascist with a badge. That's what he is to me. And, he needs to get out, frankly. This sheriff from Florida, okay. You couldn't sheriff your way out of a paper bag. Guarantee you, because sheriff is a verb now. No, I mean, come on. What's with this? Oh, I would lock the rascal up. Come on. What's with that? Where are you from, man? It's ridiculous. And I'm playing around. I don't mean any disrespect to the guy. I'm sure he's a fine guy. But seriously, this is not your jurisdiction. Why are you saying anything about it? It's ridiculous. And it's not even an area for the sheriff to talk about. Even though I do believe the sheriff has ultimate jurisdiction over most everything, it's not the topic for the sheriff. It's ridiculous. But on the topic of the FBI, I want to, and especially getting the iPhones, I want to talk about, too, the presidential candidates, because obviously this is a local issue, too. Local people are voting in the national presidential election, whether I believe they should or not, notwithstanding. People are going to do it whether I say they shouldn't or not, right? So people are going to vote in the national presidential election. And obviously the Republican nominee is going to be Trump. He's running away with it, easy, which I'm kind of okay with, even though I disagree with him on nearly everything, actually. I disagree with Donald Trump on nearly everything, but I like how he's shaking things up. I like how he's making people angry. And he's totally trolling every political organization ever. He makes Tumblr liberals mad. He makes SJWs mad. And that subsequently makes me kind of giddy. I think that's really funny. So in that sense, I'm not a Donald Trump supporter by any means, but I appreciate what he's doing in some regards. And just the trolling aspect of it, I think, is really funny. But his statements about Apple obviously are they're unforgivable, is what I'm trying to say. His statements about Apple are unforgivable, easily. And Clinton and Sanders have not really been standing on firm ground on Apple and the FBI scandal, I guess you'd call it. Clinton and Sanders have been standing on really shaky, uneven sand when it comes to that. They won't really choose a position because you can't when you're standing on shaky, uneven sand. They're not really choosing any sort of position. They're just saying, well, it's a huge issue, and we'll talk about that later. And that's about all he says about it. And Clinton just cackles. I'm not sure actually what Ted Cruz's position on it is. He probably quoted a Bible verse that's unrelated or something. Ben Carson fell asleep during the question, so I don't know what he had to have said about it. I think Carson's a good guy, by the way. I've got nothing against Carson. But anyway, there's another issue in terms of privacy that I was reading about not too long ago, I think maybe a month ago, that's not really been talked about either, and it really needs to be. This is from The Atlantic. Very good magazine. I think it's a newspaper, technically. Lots of good stuff anyway. It's about a private company that's connected to the American government, a private company which has captured 2.2 billion photos of license plates in cities throughout the throughout the U.S. That's what I'm trying to say. It stores them in a database tagged with the location where they were taken. And normally we would say, well, if it's doing it for a police contractor or for a sheriff, we can kind of understand. We may not agree, but we can understand. But here's the kicker. It's selling that data. What? A private corporation, Vigilant Solutions, is taking photos of cars and trucks with its vast network of unobtrusive cameras. Unobtrusive maybe physically, but philosophically not at all. Unobtrusive cameras. It retains location data on each of those pictures and then sells it. It's happening right now in nearly every major American city, according to the article. The company's taken about 2.2 billion license plate photos to date. Each month, it captures and then permanently stores about 80 million additional geotagged images. They may well have photographed your license plate, like yours and mine and David Tulis's and anyone else, Keon Rose, who does Clutch or Keon Rose. They've probably taken a picture of his license plate, probably taken a picture of my license plate, my weird Buick LeSabre that's going to shake apart any second now, probably taking a picture of David's Honda, probably taking a picture of Confederate Mike's weird convertible thing, taking a picture of everything. Because that's what it's about. It's about getting information. Getting information is one of the most important things to maintaining a system like the one we have now. Each month, it captures and permanently stores about 80 million additional geotagged images. So it's not just an image and it's sort of floating around there. It's an image that also has location info linked to it. Now, what you might say, pray tell, would be the purpose of this? Well, if you happen to have this information and say somewhere down the line a criminal court case comes up and you can't really prove where your subject was at any one given time, now we can use this information and say, oh, actually, we have a geotagged image which shows, and because your car, when you're driving, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy would be the argument. When you're driving, it depends from state to state, but nonetheless, we have this geotagged photo that Vigilant Solutions has so graciously sold us that shows that you actually were at the scene of the crime at this particular time. Now, on its face, that seems like a pretty cool thing where we can solve crimes using new technology. On its face, yes. But what about all the other people whose rights are being essentially infringed upon? They're being identified and then their location is being stored with next to no precedent whatsoever. There's no precedent whatsoever. And these systems are being put on, this infrastructure is being put on a lot of cop cars now too, where just a cop driving around in his cruiser is taking a picture of every license plate he sees, and he's not even consciously doing it. The policeman driving may not even know that it's doing this, right? And it's cars driving around taking pictures of people's license plates and then storing them in some large network so that the police force in, say, Chattanooga, as an example, where we are, has a database, or maybe you're in Saudi Daisy. Maybe you're in Ringgold. Hey, represent. Ringgold's a cool place, except for the government. Except for that guy who was a professional wrestler who tried to run for mayor, and then they told him he couldn't, and he said his campaign signs were stolen. Anyway, Ringgold's a cool town. No, but the police force in all these different cities are taking photos of different license plates. So now, effectively, over the course of maybe a month, you basically have the license plate of everyone who's ever driven in Ringgold during this time frame. For what purpose, though? Why? Because these are innocent people who have done nothing wrong. There's no presumption of guilt, obviously. There's no reasonable cause. There's no probable cause is the word I'm looking for. There's no probable cause for pulling them over. There's no probable cause for searches or seizures. So why are you taking photos of their license plates? Why? What's going on here? Why are you taking my photo if I'm suspected of doing no crime? Now, I understand that if you are walking around in public, you can take someone's photo if they're walking around on the street because they've the Supreme Court cases about this already. They've no reasonable expectation of privacy. But when automatically, I assume when a policeman or a sheriff's deputy or a sheriff himself is taking a photo, or the FBI is taking photos of regular people walking down the street, there must be some presumption of wrongdoing going on here. If a cop or a sheriff's deputy or an FBI agent or an NSA agent through some remote camera somewhere is taking a picture of someone walking down the street or someone's license plate, you kind of think, do they think I've done something wrong? What if you're walking down the street and you're just walking along? A cop stops you and he says, hold on a second, let me take your picture real quick. You're like, what do you do? Why? Or maybe you're nicer and you say, oh, sure, should I smile? Maybe you're more into that. And they take your picture and they say, all right, thanks, you can go. And you walk along. And then you sort of think, wait a minute, what happened there? I wasn't really detained. I wasn't under arrest. He just took my picture and at this location, and I don't really know why. What happened? And that's basically what happens every single day, millions and actually billions of times over with companies like Vigilant Systems taking these photos. And you might make the pseudo free market argument saying, well, a system like Vigilant Systems can sell this information, obviously, because it's a business and there's a hole in the market which is provided by government. Well, okay, cool. But remove government from that equation and Vigilant Systems has no reason to exist anymore, right? Like you can make the pseudo-capitalist argument and say that, well, obviously, these corporations are going to exist because government creates the hole in the market for them. But what if government wasn't there, or this form of government wasn't there to create that hole in the market? Then you wouldn't have these massive military contractors. You wouldn't have these massive corporations which sell information to the government. The problem is not capitalism. The problem is not free market. The problem is government, plain and simple. Now, you might say, and you might have heard David Tulis say before on his show, Nooganomics, the David Tulis show, I should say, on every weekday from 9 to 11, where he really expands upon a lot of the ideas that we bring up here on Binary. You should definitely give him a listen every weekday, 9 to 11. Check him out tomorrow, 9 to 11. He's going to be talking about great topics. He always is. Probably has a guest on. Good stuff. Make sure you listen to Colin Cowherd. Coming up next, by the way, from 12 to 3. Sean Hannity's on after that from 3 to, I think, 6. Lots of good content here on Hot News Talk Radio, NASCAR, NFL. You can get the TuneIn Radio app to listen to us on TuneIn Radio. You can get the Bloom Sky app to listen to it, not listen, sorry. You can watch the weather on Bloom Sky. Lots of great stuff that we offer here on Hot News Talk Radio. But all of that aside, when you hear David Tulis talk about government and how we're not anti-government, we're actually pro-government, you might be a little bit confused, and I want to expand upon that idea. He's not talking about government in the sense of we are very pro the feds. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is pro-government as in self-government, not third-party out there weird alien government that's in Washington, D.C. We're not talking about that government where these people have never been to Chattanooga before. You know, some of the even state senators in Tennessee probably have never been to Chattanooga. I bet there's one or two that haven't. You know, very foreign to third-party government. We're very pro self-government because, believe it or not, lots of people are capable of governing themselves. We don't actually need a third party to tell us what to do constantly. Now, again, as I was talking about last segment, I guess, the system we have today, especially the money system, is set up so that you have to have total control over information and flow of information and flow of money. You have to have control over that because otherwise faith goes away and the system collapses. If you talk about the Federal Reserve, you talk bad about the Fed, suddenly you're getting attacked. If you can talk bad about Bill Clinton, call him a rapist. I've seen people do that. I don't know if that's true or not. If he is, I don't know, but I've seen that allegation thrown out there. You can talk bad about Reagan, Bush, the other Bush, Nixon. Talk bad about any individual you want, but as soon as a candidate for president or senator or congressman starts talking bad about the Fed, suddenly things go south for them. And we noticed that. We've noticed that with past politicians before. Ron Paul as a good example. Rand Paul is another good example. His audit the Fed bill didn't go so well for him. Sanders actually altered that bill quite a lot before it finally passed, by the way. It's all a mess, and you need complete control over the flow of information for it to work. That's why we have the NSA. That's why we have vigilance systems selling license plate information. That's why we have angry sheriffs demanding that people give up information to the FBI, because these idiots believe in the system for some reason. It's ridiculous. Local is the solution. Colin Cowherd's coming up next.